Bitcoin critics are the ones that really get me going a lot of the time because most 99% of the time they're not Bitcoin users. They don't understand it on that level. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of the work over the years to show that Bitcoin is something much more than just something you buy and you sit on. It's something that has solved many problems for people around the world that fiat currency did not solve for them. And so, at the end of the day, it's also the most honest form of money. And when we all grow up using money, and but it's very few of us actually understand like how it's made and all of the tricks that are done with it.
Joining us is a pioneer in the field, Matt Ahlborg. Matt is the founder of Pay-Per-Q, an AI platform powered by Bitcoin micropayments. He's also known for his groundbreaking data analysis at usefultulips.org, where he uncovered Bitcoin's real-world impact in developing countries. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Tadu. Appreciate it.
Most definitely. So, Matt, this is your first time here, so let's kind of dig into the beginnings of your Bitcoin journey. How did you get into Bitcoin and where did that journey begin?
Sure. So probably around 2013, not probably, in 2013, when it had its first run up to around $1,000, I saw it on the news. It kind of caught my attention, and that's pretty much where my journey started. I think the day after I bought my first um, little piece of Bitcoin, the price went down by 50% or so. So that was my baptism. But I hung around, and I as you said, I kind of became interested in the promises of Bitcoin in developing countries, if it actually was going to do the things that everybody said it was going to do. So in 2014 and 15, I was really interested in this platform, no longer around. It was called localbitcoins.com. It was a peer-to-peer trading website where you could, kind of like a Craigslist for Bitcoin trading. You could go there, you'd say either I'm buying or I'm selling Bitcoin, and then you find another trader who's wanting to do the same. And they publish their data online, and so I could see which countries were trading Bitcoin, where the users were coming from, so on and so forth. And so through that analysis, I found that like it was definitely catching on in a very particular set of countries, and those countries were ones that have really bad currencies, capital controls, all sorts of monetary distress, economic problems, and so it really started singing to me at that time in around 2015 or so. Yeah, so at that time I was actually in the U.S. Navy as a Chinese linguist. It was my full-time day job. Um, but at night I was doing computer science courses, and when I got out of the Navy, I was decided to move to New York City to do a data science boot camp. And the entire purpose for that boot camp was I wanted to study local Bitcoins and Paxful.com peer-to-peer trading data. Um, and so I did that, and when I went through that course, all of my projects were, I was the crazy Bitcoin guy in the program. I was using all sorts of these Bitcoin data sets. And yeah, after I got out of that course, I published several articles and they caught on in different circles. Yeah, fast forward a little bit, and in 2020, I joined the BitRefill team, and I've been with BitRefill ever since. I'm still with BitRefill in a part-time capacity, but my full-time job now is, running PPQ and trying to get it off the ground and get traction with it.
In the Twitter sphere of the world, right? Like when I was doing my research on you, it was like, oh, Matt's the Sherlock Holmes of Bitcoin data. And I was like, how is this? Why is this? Right. So like it made me more interested into finding out what have you done in the Bitcoin data world that kind of makes you this anomaly in the space. And I was like, I have to talk to this guy. I have to get this guy on my show. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, I had never heard that, but yeah, I do. I do. I find myself. I have a very analytical brain, so I'm trying to put it to good use.
Most definitely. So, Matt, let's talk about Bitcoin as a concept. Some say it's more than a currency, it's a revolution. Do you see it that way? And if so, why?
Yeah, I would say nowadays it's kind of seen less as a currency and more as a revolution. And so when I was got into Bitcoin, most 99.9% of people, back then as today, we don't really know where it's going, what the use cases will evolve to be. Um, you know, I think I was definitely in the party that thought that, it was going to be this big medium of exchange. We would be whipping out our wallets to pay each other frequently. We'd be paying for goods and services online and all that stuff. But that has taken a lot of time to evolve. And really, the narrative that has taken over nowadays is, it's this digital gold that we are supposed to buy and never touch. And yeah, it's been interesting to see, and I have opinions on that, and I'm sure you do as well. But yeah, it has been interesting to kind of see how it's gone. I think in the long term, Bitcoin needs to be a currency in order to survive. I think it needs to be a medium of exchange. I think that if it never succeeds in that, it's going to be hamstringed in the same way that gold has been hamstringed, in that the governments will place special laws on it. They will be able to control the on ramps and off ramps to it. They will place special taxes, all sorts of controls to basically render it useless. So if it can somehow become a medium of exchange and we're swapping it with each other in a peer-to-peer fashion, it gains censorship resistance in that way. So I think the medium of exchange story is, it's not over and done with, but it has been a long road, and I think it's going to be a long road, maybe decades, before we can really bring it alive in the way that we kind of hope that it will evolve in the medium of exchange area.
You've been vocal about Bitcoin's role in economic freedom, especially in those regions with financial instability. Can you share any examples that solidified this belief for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's many examples. So back in the day, these peer-to-peer trading websites, Local Bitcoins and Paxful, the advertisement to do the trade, it would have information about the terms of the trade. Either the buyer or the seller would post like a half page long of information about the trade. And oftentimes they would put their phone number. And so I spent several years messaging random people on these websites, asking them the question, like, why do you actually trade Bitcoin? What's actually going on here? Why do you find a need to use this very difficult thing to use instead of, regular money? And through that, I learned that it is being used for remittance heavily in certain countries. It's being used for remittance because the governments in those countries, for example, Venezuela, they heavily tax remittances coming in, and they don't call it a tax, but that is what it amounts to. They have an official exchange rate that doesn't reflect the actual street exchange rate. And in doing so, when your brother who immigrated to the U.S. sends you $100 worth of money, and it's converted into local currency, you are getting very, very little value for that. When you do it with Bitcoin, though, when you send $100 of Bitcoin and then you sell it for local currency in Venezuela, you are able to turn that into a lot more local currency than a regular Western Union transfer. I've seen it being used to get around capital controls. So a lot of these same countries will prevent their citizens from acquiring US dollars. And you need US dollars to buy goods on the international market. You're not able to use Zimbabwe currency to buy cars, for example, on the international market. So another use case that I saw was there was this Japanese used car website. I forget the name of it. This goes a long time ago, but for whatever reason, they were accepting Bitcoin. And so I kind of dug into that, and I found out that these car dealers in Zimbabwe would go to this Japanese used car website, and they would buy cars with 300,000 miles on them. And because they couldn't exchange their local currency for these cars, and the government of Zimbabwe did not allow them to convert local currency to dollars, they would instead use local currency to buy Bitcoin, and then use that Bitcoin to buy the cars, have them shipped to South Africa, and then go retrieve them in Durban, South Africa, and drive them up to Zimbabwe. So that's an example of getting around capital controls. Many other use cases out there. It's amazing to see. There's a lot of folks who say, when they read the Bitcoin white paper, it just like magically all made sense to them, and it was this magical epiphany of understanding. And For me, that wasn't the case. And I think for most people, that's not the case. You have to learn how the world works first outside of your bubble of the US or Canada or Europe where things actually somewhat work. And you understand the problems and the difficulties that people in places have in just moving money across borders. And only then, when you understand how hard it is to use money in that way, then you start appreciating the concept of Bitcoin. So,
Yeah, I have to agree with that 1,000%. I'm first generation, so my father's actually from Africa, West Africa, so I definitely can relate to the things you're saying there, Matt, for sure.
where originally is your dad from?
Ghana, he's from Ghana.
Ghana. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So they're I feel like in the spectrum of West Africa, Ghana's kind of a little bit more on the forefront. I mean, they still have
Yep.
like energy issues, generator issues and stuff, but compared to some other places in West Africa, like they're still kind of getting there a little bit better. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've never been to Ghana, but I understand that they're definitely ahead on tech, and they at least historic maybe I don't know about recently, but a little more free market oriented. Um, yeah, I honestly can't remember the first time. I just remember I think I bought on Coinbase way back in the day when it first came around, and I think moving it into my own wallet the first time was probably something really memorable for me because, it starts actually computing in your brain that once it's in your own wallet, like nobody else in the world can go get it. And it also comes with a great responsibility, right? Once it's in your own wallet, nobody can rescue that if you lose your password or anything like that. So I think that is kind of the first time I think for a lot of people, and most people, maybe not most, but a big chunk of people don't even realize the significance of that is when you move money to your own wallet, it's an electronic wallet, but it can't be rescued and nobody in the world can take it from you. It's a very unique thing. So I can't, like I said, I can't remember specifically, but I do remember moving Bitcoins around back in the day, sending them different places. And there were platforms back then that you could use and try it out in every which way. And it was very, very cool. Yeah.
Most definitely. And, kind of fast forwarding from that, I want to talk about your newest thing that you're kind of building, which is pay per queue. Could you explain to the audience what that is and why you're so excited about building this?
Absolutely. So pay-per-queue or ppq.ai, it's a website where you can load in Bitcoin either on-chain or via Lightning. Lightning is our most popular payment method, as little as 10 cents, and you can pay for AI queries. And you're not just getting any old regular AI queries. You're getting queries from, the most premium models in the world. So you can come to PPQ. You can load in 10 cents and you can run a few queries for GPT 4.0. You can do Claude 3.5 Sonnet. You can do Perplexity queries, MetaLlama 3. We have dozens of models now, and they're from the top tier companies in the world, and you can do so privately as well. So when you come to my website, you can load in whatever amount of crypto that you want. You're not giving me your email. You're not giving me your credit card number, your name. So all data, all of your conversational data is stored inside of your browser. So we're not even storing your conversations on our servers. At least right now, we're bringing that option forward. It's very convenient to have us store your data, but we're leaving it up to the user. But I think, as AI comes online and more people get used to it, it is going to become, you shouldn't have to give away all of your private information just to use this very powerful thing. And so I think having PPQ, it creates a way for people to access those premium models without giving up everything about them. And, we're asking sometimes very intimate questions to AI. How do I deal with this rash? Or like, maybe I might have gotten my girlfriend and I might be pregnant or just this or that. And so it deserves privacy, true privacy. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, most definitely. I've been digging into it. Like you just caught my eye on Twitter and I was like, I've used a lot of language models, AI stuff just for helping me with my podcast, for example. And I found that, PPQ was very, very different, very interesting. You talked about the limitations of the Lightning Network in the past. but I also see why you use that as a base layer. So what do you say to the people that are focused on the other cryptocurrencies outside of Bitcoin and saying, hey, Matt, why can't we use this crypto for PPQ?
Yeah, so, well, firstly, PBQ does accept other currencies. However, as you pointed out, we have prioritized Lightning and Bitcoin. And the reason for that is, and I do think Lightning does have a lot of limitations, but I think that it's the only shot at like true long-term scalable privacy. I think a lot of these other cryptos, they all advertise, faster transactions and cheaper transactions and more throughput and all that stuff. And then when it actually comes to when they actually become popular, they get extremely expensive because they actually full on blockchains just cannot handle all of that throughput, no matter which blockchain it is. There are blockchains out there that have, they're comparatively more centralized and they have comparatively higher throughput than Bitcoin, but it's still going to be nothing compared to what's required for long-term scalability across hundreds of millions of users. And so Lightning is a decent shot at that. When you I'm sure your listeners are aware of the basics of blockchains, and that's every transaction is recorded on the blockchain. That's not doable for every single transaction globally in the world. There needs to be a huge chunk of those transactions that don't end up on the blockchain, and that's why Lightning's payment channels is a really big deal. I could go on and on about why I think Lightning has the best long-term shot at this, but instead that's kind of what I'm doing with PPQ is I'm trying to prove it. I'm trying to show that it is going to be um, it is a very unique payment method in the whole AI space, especially as we're coming up on AI agents and things like that. That's going to be billions, hundreds of billions of calls a day, payments flying across the internet to pay for AI agents. And you're not going to be able to put those on a layer one blockchain or even a layer two blockchain. It's going to have to be in payment channels.
Most definitely. And what I also find interesting, Matt, is that of course you're doing like a Bitcoin based service, but I noticed that you're layering it on top of like Chat GPT and some of these other things. Like, did you want to go that approach? Did you want to say like, okay, if you're familiar with Chat GPT, you can use my product, or would you feel more comfortable kind of building out something organically from the start where like they don't have to go to Chat GPT to get access to people?
Um, I think I'm kind of building it for many directions. So I'm trying to pull in existing subscribers. So with most AI, you have to have a $20 subscription. And for a big chunk of people, they're just too casual of a user. Why not come to PPQ and spend like $3 a month instead of $20 a month? And our average user spends, I haven't done the math lately, but probably $5 to $6 a month, and they're using it several times a week. Our average query costs like 2 pennies. So yes, I'm trying to attract people who currently have subscriptions, but I would say a huge chunk of my users, maybe the majority, it's people who maybe they tried out some freemium version of AI like a year ago and they thought it was cool, but they just never built that daily habit of using AI. And now that AI is coming along a little further and further, becoming a little more capable, they're ready to try this AI thing again. And I'm capturing a lot of those people. And that's part of the reason is I have such a low barrier of entry to premium AI. If you want to do premium AI with a credit card, you have to sign up for a subscription. There's very few ways you can just like throw $5 and try it out, right? But if you're a crypto native type person, you can throw $1 at me and you can try out the most premium models, and all you're committing is $1. You're not signing up for a subscription or even an annual subscription. Now, some of these companies, like they try to get you to sign up for a whole year at once. It's a bit ridiculous. So yeah, I'm just trying to make this as useful as possible to as many groups of people as possible. Um,
Most definitely. And what I love about it is like I'm kind of like a real geek for Bitcoin, but this is how high level I was thinking about it, Matt. So a lot of people right now are doing at home mining, whether it's a bidax, whether it's these other mining protocols. And for the most part, unless you have a lot of terahash, you're not going to get a lot of money out of it. You might get like 7 cents or 10 cents a day, right? And I'm thinking if a query costs me like 2 cents to just make a query on your application, it would be beautiful to see people that just don't have a high barrier of entry. They just have a bid axe. They're mining. They're getting like 10 cents a day. They can use that Lightning transaction now to actually use PPQ essentially for free. Like I think that
Yeah.
they could get Curies for free, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. This is next level. That's what really made me say like, okay, this is different compared to everything else I've seen.
Yeah, that is a great use case. I haven't had anybody. I have limited kind of interface with my users. That's one of the problems when you don't collect their email address. It's hard to reach out to them. But I'm sure a few of them are using kind of mining proceeds, and it is probably just an extremely convenient way. Not to mention, like when you are mining, sometimes it's hard to find an off ramp for that money that you've mined. So now you have a very easy off ramp. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think that if you hunker down on that, I think in the next year or two, you're going to see a lot of people jumping on board because as privacy becomes a concern, as artificial intelligence becomes more ubiquitous, like you mentioned, I think the tried and true crypto people, Bitcoin people, they're always trying to find a way to circumvent, like, how do we get less of our information out there on the internet? And also, with like Trump and everybody else kind of being like Bitcoin first, they're also going to say like, how do I just use Bitcoin as a currency instead of using my credit card or fiat? So I think that just makes perfect sense. It's a perfect marriage right there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So Matt, you occasionally have been at odds with traditional economists and other crypto critics. How do you respond to their skepticism about Bitcoin's long-term viability?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me started. Bitcoin critics are the ones that really get me going a lot of the time because most 99% of the time they're not Bitcoin users. They don't understand it on that level. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of the work over the years to show that Bitcoin is something much more than just something you buy and you sit on. It's something that has solved many problems for people around the world that fiat currency did not solve for them. And so at the end of the day, it's also the most honest form of money. And when we all grow up using money, but it's very few of us actually understand like how it's made and all of the tricks that are done with it. And I think if anything comes out of this whole Bitcoin experiment, it's raising the awareness of people on like, okay, so how does the Bitcoin thing work? Okay, and then what do they compare it to? The regular monetary system. And then they start looking into the regular monetary system in a way that they never did before. And they start finding all of these really, honestly, like Ponzi scheme-esque things that central banks do to keep the currency afloat, printing tons, giving certain groups of people special access to it. Um, yeah, uh, yeah, I think we're at a stage now where the critics are having a really hard time writing it off anymore because it refuses to die like they've been saying it would, and it continues to prove itself with various use cases.
100%. Even that reminds me, like I'm getting a lot of people on my Twitter, on my podcast Twitter, asking about, I want to come on the show. I want to talk about real estate because with the fires in California, everybody's properties are being burned down. And all the Bitcoiners are like, well, if you had bought Bitcoin instead of buying that $200,000 house, you'd be in a better position right now.
Yeah, yeah, I still advocate like putting not all your eggs in one basket, but I absolutely believe that you know property ownership is a very weird thing when you think about it. You get taxed on it every single year. You have to constantly upkeep your home and all that stuff. So it's not. I don't think it's a great investment. As somebody who owns a little bit of property, I've learned that lesson the hard way.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if they don't like allow you to insure it. So like you're putting all this money in. If
Yeah,
you can insure it, what's the point? You might as well just get Bitcoin and keep it in cold storage. At least you're in
yeah,
control of your own destiny a little bit.
yep, absolutely.
Yep. So Matt, looking ahead, where do you see Bitcoin in your opinion? Because of course we don't have a crystal ball. In the next decade, do you think that this will become the backbone of global finance, or do you envision it evolving into something completely different?
Yeah, I think it has a shot at becoming the backbone of global finance, but I think it's going to be more than 10 years. I think it's going to be 50, 60, 100 years. It's probably going to be after we've all died. I said this once, but when the Reformation came around, like when the Protestants split from the Catholics and stuff, like there was like 200 years where the Protestants were just getting slaughtered left and right. And I feel like maybe that's going to be how early Bitcoiners are, where we're just going to get destroyed by these all powerful governments, and then eventually it will win in the long run. But this stuff takes a long time to evolve. I think the environment and the scenario is almost perfect though, because you have this global hegemon, the United States. It's kind of plateauing, maybe even slightly declining, right? You have a couple of other very big entities, China, India. You have all the BRICS countries that are kind of a tier below that, but also growing very nicely. So you have this very like plutocracy of countries or group of countries now, and all of them would love to control the world with their currency, right? But not all the other countries are ever going to hop on board with that type of thing. So there's this neutral currency out there, and it's honest and it's provably honest, and that's why I think it could kind of thread the needle. And I do believe in a lot of that kind of nation state game theory where when one country starts stockpiling, it's going to cause another country to start stockpiling, and then eventually it's going to be this big rush to buy Bitcoin type thing. I do think that scenario is possible, but I just think it's going to take a long time to really. It's going to come and go in waves. Bitcoin's going to look like it's down and out for a few years, and then it'll come roaring back. And yeah, that's kind of how I see it play out.
Yeah, nice. Pay-per-Q is this revolutionary blending of AI with Bitcoin micropayments. That's what really attracted me to it. Do you think that we'll see more of this kind of convergence between AI and blockchain in the future? And what's next for pay-per-Q?
Yeah, so I think honestly, one of the big problems that PPQ is solving is it's so we've gotten used to these subscriptions just on all of our services, Spotify, Netflix, AI. Subscriptions are ubiquitous now, and so I think that it potentially is going to really start eroding the subscription models of not only just AI companies, but of all these other companies that have been running on subscription models. I think it's like, I've done a decent amount of research on this, and a lot of people think that subscriptions have come because like it's the marketing departments that are coming up with the subscription model. Like, let's get people to sign up for this thing that they forget they have, and then we get to bill them for free, and it's like a perfect win-win. But or it's a perfect win for the company. But I think that just when you dig a little deeper, you find that the fee levels on the fiat payment rails are too high to do pay per use type of billing for many different models, many different products online. But crypto and Bitcoin and Lightning, they bring this final settlement. So all Visa Mastercard transactions, you can charge back if you declare fraud or something, and that adds an enormous cost to it. And that's why we end up with subscriptions eventually. But crypto is a final settlement, and so I think that it's potentially going to like overthrow the entire subscription model maybe in the next decade or so. We'll see very few subscriptions then. Yeah, so I think that is going to happen. I think that a lot of people are blockaded from using the best AI right now because they don't have access to the Visa Mastercards in all of these countries, right? So as I said, a lot of countries, many countries in Asia, Africa, South America, they might even have Visa or Mastercards, and you might be able to get your hands on one, but they don't work they have limits on them. The capital controls apply to those cards. For example, I have a user in Egypt in Egypt, apparently you can only buy $50 worth of US dollars with Egyptian currency in any given month. So just think, if you're like an upper middle class Egyptian, you got your Netflix subscription, you got your Spotify, you got your AI subscription, maybe you're paying for phone apps and all that stuff, you can get over $50 very easily. So crypto is another way around that, right? So it just opens up the uh, number of people that can access this stuff big time. So
Yeah, that's why Bitcoin is so important to the world. Matt, I want to kind of switch things up and just hit you with some rapid fire questions. quick answers, like usually just like a one-word answer. So are you
All
ready?
right. Yeah.
If you could give one piece of advice to someone holding their first Bitcoin, what would it be?
Put your password in the right place. That's my answer on that. Big time.
What's one question you get asked most about Bitcoin?
Uh, mm, People always ask me, what's the price going to be next? That's the most common normal guy question for me.
The Lightning Network in one word.
Ooh, uh, network topology. Topology. That's the most interesting thing about it to me.
Nice. The last one. Bitcoin, a trend that you're most excited about in 2025, or is there something else that's catching your eye on the technology space?
It's still Bitcoin, and I would say maybe even AI. It's just AI. There's so many cool things to do with AI right now. So both of those things, where my mind is at all the time.
Nice, nice. Thank you for those rapid fire questions, Matt. Is there any other thing about PPQ that you want the audience to know, or more importantly, that you want to kind of elaborate to people that is going to be a game changer? Because me personally, I think that this is going to be something that is going to be really big, especially as we see strategic reserve coming in, ETFs coming in. It's just going to be more of the conversation around Bitcoin. And I just think it's going to be natural that AI is going to kind of make this marriage in, and everyone's going to start looking for how do I use micropayments? How do I find the cheapest solution? And I think PPQ is going to be the go-to platform for that. For my listeners out there, if you loved hearing this conversation, which I surely did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to the Bitcoin Source. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations like this with Matt. Until next time, keep stacking those Satoshis and keep questioning the status quo.